Welcome to the Government Connection with Mary Scott Nabers. Mary, a former statewide office holder and now CEO of Strategic Partnerships, brings you conversations with industry experts. This is your connection to breaking news, funding opportunities, legislative actions, and more. Brought to you by Government Market News, a division of Strategic Partnerships, Inc.
Welcome to the podcast today. I have an illustrious guest, and you're going to love hearing what he has to say. Pat Wood is joining me, and Pat is currently the CEO of Hunt Energy Network. But before that, Pat was the past chair of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC. And not enough of us know a lot about FERC, but we do know that it's very powerful, it's very important, and energy is maybe the hottest topic we've got today. So, Pat, I am so glad you're joining us. You have a huge career in energy. You are truly an expert. You sit on many energy boards. You know what's happening worldwide. So we're going to want to hear a little bit about that. But anything else that you want to add to what you've done is great. And then just kind of, if you will, talk to us about what's going on in the world of energy today.
Well, great, Mary. It is so awesome to hear your voice. For those of y'all that don't know our background, I had the joy of being working for one of Mary's colleagues on the Texas Railroad Commission back in 93, 94. And got to know Mary and her wonderful staff then, and been a fan ever since. So I went on to be chairman of the Texas Public Utilities Commission under George W. Bush, and then went with him to D.C. to do the FERC job. So that 10 years of being a regulator, I don't think warped my mind too much, but it did make me mindful of the fact that the power industry, gas industry, telephone industry, all those important infrastructure backbone industries are just so crucial to our way of life. And they're so, unlike a lot of commodities, like, well, of course, eggs got popular this year, but, a lot of these commodities are not that tightly regulated, but we have had a long history of regulating these infrastructure industries around the globe, really. Our system's probably not too different from certainly the European, Japanese system. It's evolved in different ways, but as far as the involvement of government. And so our approach under Governor and then President Bush was to let's put market forces at play in as many places as we can, because that does a good job of getting better pricing, better services, and better technology. And so we've seen that really play out in the telecom industry in a beautiful way. It's just starting in the power industry. So that's what I did at FERC. We regulated the gas and the power industry on the federal level, kind of counterpart to what we did at the Railroad Commission at the state level. Long ago, FERC regulated the production of natural gas, and I think the Congress just came to the conclusion that was just too much regulation. That's a competitive industry. If it's not a monopoly, why are we regulating it? So that was kind of Bush's philosophy. Pat, let's get to a market everywhere we can. And so that's been my kind of professional career, is trying to instill that market forces, but maintain the reliability of the historical system that we've had. And we've had a few hiccups, including here in Texas, but the important thing is that we really serve the needs of the public, and those needs are growing. They're growing worldwide with all the data centers. I mean, everything we use draws on power. I mean, looking around an office here, and we dispatch, I run a business building batteries and generation on the Texas power grid, which is a growing market. And so we have a dispatch center over here that's just hugely tied into both the telecom and the power networks. And so it's just a crucial commodity to our way of life. Just imagine your life, Mary. I mean, you and I have talked about backup generation for our houses and such, but when power goes out, and it will due to weather mostly, but those things are just so important to our way of life.
So, Pat, a lot of our listeners are public officials, city, county, universities, and a lot of things are happening because of the high demand for more and more power, more energy. universities are building district distribution energy district systems,
Yep.
and cities and counties, all over the country are having data centers come in who need much more power than the city is or the county is prepared to provide, or they worry about it. Talk about a little bit about any advice you can give them, any advice you can give our governmental leaders right now about how to. We want all the growth, we want all the demand, and we want all the new technology, but what do we do about the power?
That is the question. I mean, we've got a data center customer, for example, that is got demands that are the size of a small Texas town. 10 megawatts is a lot. 100 megawatts is the size of a city. And so you think about what a demand is in like the whole state of Texas on the very hottest day this past year, used 85,000 megawatts of energy.
Wow.
City of Houston would be about a quarter of that. So, a small town could be 10 megawatts to 100 to 1,000. Depending on depending on their industrial base. Industrial customers in most of the U.S. are about a third, maybe 30% of the total demand. And then commercial customers, everything from a small grocery store to a big box retailer selling all kind of commodities would be in that middle sector, about maybe 40%. And then residential customers from apartments all the way up to large homes would be the other 30%. So that's kind of the U.S. numbers. I know they vary around the globe, but so you do have three very different types of customer bases on a draw. And so these new customers, these data customers, are similar to an industrial user. They really need power really at a steady level. They don't kind of vary like a home. Like at our home, we'd use a lot in the morning when we get up and make coffee and get dressed. And then it's low during the day and then higher in the evening when we cook and are home watching TV and such. But, during the day, these data customers, just like a chemical plant, would use a lot of power straight through the day. So they have different kind of needs. So we've got to have a system that can really handle both. And so we do batteries here. So batteries are kind of we were never able to store power like we were able to store natural gas. And probably 2018 is when globally the cost of batteries became really competitive with everything else. And so that really added a lot of beautiful discipline to the system that we never had. So that's a good news story that technology is helping us. As we're adding in Texas, actually, people don't believe this, but it's the number 6 nation in the world on renewable electricity. We have so much solar and wind that was just not here when you and I were on the Railroad Commission, but it's come into Texas in a major way. I think due to the fact we opened up the market to competition. And so these are low-cost resources here and around. Europeans have we learned a lot from how the Europeans set up their grid so they could use more clean electricity like that. Nuclear energy was a big player globally in the late 20th century. The 3 Mile Island incident here and the Fukushima accident in Japan, as well as Chernobyl in Ukraine, those are really big stories that stopped nuclear. But it's coming back, not just great big stations, but more and more of these smaller 75 megawatt modular plants. I kind of see that probably being a big part of the future. But those things, when you think about them, just say I'm in a small town in Europe or in the U.S., and I'm trying to figure out, gosh, there's not a lot of jobs that come with these data farms. I mean, building them, yes, you build a big building, you insulate it, you put all the equipment inside and put all the fiber optic cables to connect it to the World Wide Web. And all these construction jobs are certainly very attractive to a local government, but over time, you don't have a lot of men or women working at the data farm. You have some, obviously, to keep it going, but so those kind of have a different level of attractiveness than like a semiconductor manufacturing facility or a construction yard or a mechanical whatever. All these other type of very job intensive customers. And so you've got to think about what can we do here that allows that to happen, but doesn't really impinge upon our reliable service to all the people that live there now. Because you don't want a new customer to be subtractive. You want them to be additive. And so that means the whole power grid in your neighborhood or in your region of the state or in your region of the country, that has to be robust enough with power sources of all sorts. And a lot of these data customers are pretty keen on cleaner power, so they're interested in wind, solar, geothermal, hydroelectric, nuclear power that doesn't emit carbon. And so you've got you want to plug into a grid that has a lot of that, which fortunately we do here in Texas. But, some parts of the U.S. and some parts of Europe are not so blessed with the renewable electricity that they've got to use more gas and perhaps even coal, even though coal's pretty much on a global decline, except in
Pat,
Asia.
I want to jump in just a half a second while you're on this subject, because I want to, every morning when I come into the office, I have all kinds of services that dump all of the newest trends, the newest news for every industry, because we work in every industry. And I was a little surprised this morning, though. I ran across an article talking about grid scale storage. Grid storage is now the fastest growing of all energy technologies. And so for those of us who don't follow this, I assume also that the battery technology is also a new thing we need to be watching. Are there other things? And then I want you to come back to, I know at the federal level, the fear of a cyber breach in one of our grids or one of our operating systems is one of the highest fears we have. But talk a little bit about, if you will, about what are some of the new technologies that are going to be built around storage of all of this energy and power.
So storage, I would say the two big things we didn't have when we started, and we were in the U.S., part of a trend that happened throughout really the European countries, and then probably a decade later in Japan, and Korea's just sort of starting on it as well. But, this move to the newer technologies, and I would say the two big ones are storage, which is, again, what I do with the batteries. And a lot of the batteries come from China. They make a really quality product. We use it. I'm, of course, dealing with the tariff issues on that today. My goodness,
you are dealing with the tariffs then.
And then the other one is flexible demand. And so you've got customers, we used to just turn on the light. But now there's a lot of smart stuff, most of which ties into your phone. But, certainly at a commercial enterprise, it would be probably a person operating it. But you manage the system internally. Like if you go in a grocery store, sometimes you'll notice the lights are not on the frozen food aisle when you walk down there. They're purposely turned down to save that electricity until a person walks by and then they're activated. So you've got this kind of active management of the demand so that you don't put the stress on the system and you don't pay more. I mean, it's obviously all motivated by the economics, but so having a smart grid and having smart appliances has allowed us to do a lot more flexible management of the power grid. So I would say really those two, Mary, are the biggest that have come in the last generation, or power storage, where you really break the tyranny of the bond that you had to generate power at the exact second you're using it. So that, for a grid, I mean, that management makes the air traffic control look like an easy job. And we know that's not easy for airplanes, but you have to do that really on power grids globally. You have to manage that so that the frequency of that light here in the U.S. stays at 60 hertz every second of the year. So that's hard to do. And now with wind and solar, which have a lot more variability than a natural gas plant, which is kind of flat out, or nuclear plant, which is kind of flat out, you've got to manage that variable demand from customers and the variable generation from power plants. And so that's tricky. And but we have had, we have hope. So I'm saying there's hope for this because we do have the technology that's allowed us to really keep up with that and really improve on it. Really, every year, just the advances I've seen in our business, just the storage side, but also in just the management of the demand, that really makes for a rational system. And so those are I think the most significant things going on now. I mean, I mentioned nuclear a minute ago. I think that coming back allows for a carbon-free resource to be kind of a base load. It's not depending on the variabilities of weather, but it's there. It's manageable. Those type of things. I'd say nuclear is coming back. We're going to learn how to use gas better, where we can take the carbon out of the effluent from the back end of a gas plant and combine that with concrete or put it in the earth, re-inject it back into the ocean. And so, or just take it out so it's not in the system, putting more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So those are fun to watch. I've got a lot of friends here in Houston that are involved in trying to utilize hydrogen to become a clean burning resource. Hydrogen is really the core energy component of at the atomic level. And so if you can really grab hydrogen and oxide and burn that, that's a very clean way to generate electricity. But it's at its early stages.
So, Pat, what are we doing at the federal level to keep us from having a technology warfare that shuts down our grids and our power system?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned cyber a minute ago. Yeah, I mean, Mary, I would say if they're probably the thing that keeps me up at night is if one of my batteries were to be the Trojan horse through which a bad actor from another country or from a criminal group took down the grid and or at least messed it up bad enough to where people couldn't do business or go to work or be comfortable in their home. So that's a big worry. There are a lot of smart people in this country and around the world that are deep into that issue. And the trick at the end of the day is you're not going to prevent this from ever happening. It will happen. It's happening. I remember the toughest tour I ever took as chairman of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission was to our lab in Idaho, where we actually were living through all the just basically their cybersecurity system. I walked into the control room, which looked like NASA, and it had all the places in the country where somebody was trying to get in the door unlawfully. And so it was scary.
Yeah, I also have been able to look into a 24/7 operation where you see worldwide all of the cyber threats that are trying to get in, the ones that are already in, and most of them, the ones that are already in, have already been named. They know where they try to enter, how they're going to perform. And it is a really scary sight. It makes you realize that that could be the next way we have a war. I mean,
so the best way to sleep at night on that is to make sure that you focus a lot on prevention, but that you really focus on making sure your system is resilient enough so if somebody did get through, they couldn't take it down. So that means walling off sections of the entire power grid, changing things from two-way to one-way, having a lot of, I guess I call it phase arresters, where you stop any propagation from, like maybe you could take out that chemical plant in Houston, Texas, but that wouldn't bring down the whole grid. And so those type of things, so that kind of resilience technology is really where I think the focus and the security for the world is going to be, is that we really we obviously keep an eye on the people who are coming in and try to stop that. But let's assume we don't stop that one. Let's make sure that one can't propagate across. So there's a lot of work going on that resilience side as much as we are on the prevention and detection side.
I think that is just really, really interesting. And I don't know how many of our listeners know this, but cyber breach accidents do happen, and they happen to government. And here's what surprised me so much is the fact that if a governmental entity gets breached and they are shut down, whether it's a school, a university, a state agency, whatever, normally the ransom has to be paid in Bitcoin. And so now public entities across the country are starting to have some Bitcoin available just in case that happened. I think for the average person out there who doesn't watch this real closely, that's pretty shocking. I mean,
It is, but it's just ransom. I mean, we've been doing ransom probably since we walked out of the cave back in the prehistoric era. But you got to prepare for that. And, being down for 2 days where you can't, I mean, I'm just thinking of the last one I heard where they went into the HR system and you couldn't do payroll. I mean, okay, that's not going to change the world, but for those 500 employees not getting a paycheck on the day they were planning to pay their mortgage and their car note and send their kids to college, that's dramatic. And so having the ability to be able to be resilient isn't just the power grid, it's power grid customers. And so you're talking about, I mean, that's a sad thought, but I mean, I guess you just have to kind of book that on your expense report as insurance. And so you're insuring against business interruption. That's a sad thought. You'd like to think everybody was moral and upstanding, but there are some bad actors in the world, and so you have to prepare for them.
So, Pat, I know we're running out of time. We're winding down here. So, is there any advice you would want to give public officials? Having come from government, I know that they need to be on the cutting edge of everything.
Yep.
And they don't have the budgets, they don't have the resources, and now we are cutting their budgets and their resources. And so it's hard. Sometimes it's really, really hard for public officials to be able to know how to stay on the cutting edge of everything. And you're right in the center of one of the hottest topics that they have to deal with, hottest issues they have to deal with. Any advice?
So the biggest one for me, and again, it's a extract of what you and I talked about before with backing up our homes, is backup generation. While an additional expense for a business and for a government, seems like a extravagance, but it's not. And it's not just because of the cyber attacks we just talked about, but could be due to weather. I mean, our weather is getting more extreme. We can talk about the causes some other day, but it is. And so to prepare for that, you've got to take some expenses. I mean, just say you're a local government and you've got a water treatment system. Well, if that water treatment system doesn't have electricity, which can happen in a storm event, people are going to have tainted water, and to have to boil water for a week after a storm comes through, that's a dramatic impact. So having a backup generator, and not just having one, but having one that works. I think that's what we found is a number of people across at least our state here in Texas have backup systems, but they don't maintain them and keep them in good shape so that when the bad event comes, like the weather event, you turn it on and it doesn't work. So, I mean, it's like anything else. You've got to keep it in good working order. So that sounds so pedestrian, but it's so important to our way of life that we have this backup, that we have this redundancy in our daily lives that we want our government to have for all of us. And so that would be probably my biggest word of advice is get a backup system and make sure you've got a great technician who can maintain it for you so that when you need it, it's working. And that gives you that extra comfort also when the power grid is stressed, and it will get stressed through weather or through demand, that you've got a backup that works for you. Because, again, providing essential services, people don't have the excuse of being out for 4 days. That's not acceptable to the public. So, as far as other energy related issues, I think, certainly making sure you have good fuel in your area. And different parts of the world are going to be different fuel types. I mean, here in Texas, we have a lot of natural gas, so that's actually a very good fuel resource. It's a lot cleaner than coal. I mean, obviously it puts carbon in the atmosphere, but not as much. It's a good backup. It's a good base load system. Having good access solar is very dependable, actually. It's just not there at night, but that's where our batteries come in pretty handy. Right. But, having access to good energy fuel resources is important as well. Those are not just throwaway items you think about after you close the deal on the plant, but you think about it where you site it. And so if you want to be a city that welcomes these new technologies or new customers, you got to make sure you don't just have land for them, but you have fuel for them and have access to the power grid. So
let me tag on to that to say we deal with public officials all over the United States all the time, every day. So the one bit of advice I would give along these lines is because of our climate that has definitely changed, and because of the devastating weather events we're having and the flooding we're having, which impacts everything from power to water to everything that citizens have to have, I would say if I was a mayor or a county judge or a emergency manager at the state, I would just say, look at everything with the eyes of, is it sustainable? Is it resilient? Because that is where that's where we get in trouble. And resiliency and sustainability is going to be harder than ever if we continue these weather events and wildfires and things like that, which it appears they are going to continue for a while.
And a little wrinkle on that is safety. I think we put our batteries in mostly rural areas of Texas, but sometimes we're in small towns or even small cities, and dealing with the fire marshal, because you can't just throw water on a lithium-ion battery and put a fire out. That makes it worse. And so just having a drill, having a clear emergency reaction system in place where you're working with the local officials, that's a part of doing business for me. We do that. We have those relationships. We train them just like we train our own people. And I think that's a great way where business and the public entities can work well together so that it's a safe investment in the neighborhood. Because we've got, horror stories from the last century of things going in and blowing up, killing people. Well, that's not acceptable. I mean, we've got to say we want to be a good neighbor. We want energy infrastructure to be dependable, but it's also a two-way street. We want those energy providers to be dependable. We want them to be reliable. We want them to be safe. And so making sure that the people you welcome into your neighborhood are good people that have the resources to run it well and run it sustainably and run it safely, or, should be just as easy as looking at the sun rising in the morning.
Pat, thank you so much for this conversation. We are out of time, and so I'll wind us down. But I've said many, many times, Pat Wood is one of the smartest guys you'll ever meet. And when you put him into a sector, into this sector, he is definitely an expert. So thank you. And thank you.
You bet, Mary. I miss working right down the hall from you, but you'll always be a part of me.
Thanks so much, Pat. And stay tuned. We'll have another show very, very soon.
This has been The Government Connection with Mary Scott Nabers. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe to get notifications on our upcoming programs. We hope you'll leave a review wherever you get your podcasts and send us any programming suggestions directly. Thanks for listening.